#1 radio station.
SLR is here just for you, your community radio station.
Tune in and rip the knob off.
Good evening. Welcome to the 100% Spa Show. You're in tune to slrradio.co.uk with Buzzin' B, Star, Theo, and we've got Jammers in the studio today for an action-packed show discussing a few things. First and foremost, we are going to be looking at the Black Panther. A couple of people have been, I know Jammers has been to see it, I've seen it, and we're asking the listeners who can give us some thoughts on feedback, really, because we've had some conflicting feedback. Some people are saying, oh, it's wonderful, just what we as a net people need, and other people are saying, are you sure? Are you real about this? You know, I've never seen so much propaganda, you know, in a way that's been delivered on a plate, as someone said, to people of colour, and people are buying into it. So, of course, we want to hear your news, clues and views. And we're also going to be looking at racist MP is not worthy. And it's really on the eve of the 70 years of the Windrush. The big debate continues over a blue pack for the late Wolverhampton MP Enoch Powell, who delivered one of the most diverse speeches ever made by a British politician. But now, in the eve of his death, they actually want to give him a blue plaque. And there's a controversy about that, where they've asked people in and around the Wolverhampton area their thoughts. So we want to hear your thoughts, really, whether or not individual. It's a bit like whether or not it's important that someone like Enoch Powell, who actually, even though he gave that awful speech, was at the time one of the MPs who was pushing for individuals to travel from the Caribbean to rebuild Great Britain in the early 50s.
Right, and yes, just hello to the listeners. It's Buzzin' B here, along with Star. Yes, very interesting topics there that you've raised there. The one with the Black Panther. I haven't seen it myself, but you know, just based on the general discussion that I've been hearing, it seems to be quite a mixed bag of reactions. I've heard people giving a lot of reaction to it, not in terms of reviewing it, but in terms of its significance and whether that would really translate into anything or into any real movement in terms of the political or economic thing. How does it benefit black people is one of the question a lot of people ask, and both economically, because Marvel is making quite a packet from it, I understand, and making quite a lot of money out of it. The fact that they have black directors and so forth and all casts, but where's the buck stops? We know where the buck stops.
Well, the bucks are rolling in.
Absolutely, but where's it going?
That's
just
right.
Getting the most of it.
So if you are an individual, we know Jammers is in the studio with us today, and we know he has seen the movie. If you are a listener and you have seen the movie, we would really like somebody who thought it was wonderful to give us a call, and somebody who's got reservations. 07 984 931 588. Please call us. We do have a little bit later on Unsung Heroes of the Industrial Revolution. It's a multimedia presentation that's going to be taking place tomorrow, and we'll be telling the listeners a little bit more about this opportunity at the London College of Communication. If you want to pop down there, we're going to be talking about that, because the Industrial Revolution was a great time, and people of colour made a massive contribution to that, and that has not been noted, acknowledged or even paid for in some cases. So we're going to be looking at that again. But just to remind everybody a little bit more about the show, if you are just touching your dial and you've got us on there silently purring in the background, listen to us online. If you're in the Caribbean or somewhere in Africa, we know we've got listeners, and you've got the sunshine. Here we are freezing. Outside is very cold and snowy. But on the show today, as I've said, we've got these interesting topics. But our aims and objectives. We like to look at love and romance because that's always a nice, warm, cuddly feeling. We like to look at your home, your health, your finance. You know, what's finance really about? Your fitness and your family. What do we call or don't call family these days? Friend. What is a true friend? I mean, who are we classing as friends now in the age of the technology? Some people have got 1,200 Facebook friends, but are they real friends? What virtual friends? Exactly, buzzing. How do you take your rest and relaxation? And money, what does it mean to you? What does it do for you? And spirituality and religion. We always split the two up because we believe they are two different subjects. And then we have a story for the day, a health subject, and then we have a guest as well. So today we've got a full house. I am surrounded by all these gorgeous men. We've got Buzzing Bee, Theo and Jammers all in the studio today. So welcome everybody.
Yes, welcome. And this is cold, freezing February month, and just want to welcome you. We'll be bringing you all the warmth. And for those in the UK, don't worry, just sit your chairs, get your coffee, get your teas. But we'll be warming you up today. We've got some interesting topics on today. We're looking at the Black Panther. What you think about it, and what you don't think about it. Positive about it. But we're also looking at the about Enoch Powell being a plaque. We've got the blue plaque. There seems to be a little issue there in Wolverhampton MP who doesn't really think he's worthy to be given a plaque because of his Rivers of Blood speech. So welcome on board to the 100% Sport Show this evening. Jammers?
Thank you for inviting me. Thank the ancestors, and I'm amongst a celebrity crowd in the studio today, so yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and good evening to all the my fellow contributors and the SLR listeners. Some really interesting subjects to be. I'm looking forward to weighing in on those. So let's continue and get on with that.
Okay, well let's start with the movie, the famous Black Panther movie, which it's a hot topic. We've got to be honest. It's a hot topic, not so much in mainstream. I mean, it was a hot topic for a little while when we had Daniel Kaluuya doing the rounds on all the TV stations talking about it, and actually it was quite good because he did win a BAFTA for the Rising Star Award a couple of weeks ago, which was pretty good. He's a British Ugandan actor, and I must say, as a up and coming actor, I find him very elegant. He's very amusing, and I just like the fact that he keeps it real. That for me, that's really good. It's a new breed of actors coming through. So in some ways, in the wake of the Black Panther movie, which is a Marvel movie, made with Marvel and Disney, we know it's made a lot of money. We're going to get the exact figures in a moment. Buzzing Bees can Google that. We're going to tell you how much it's made to date. But let's hear your views on it. First of all, Jammers, are you for or against the movie, or just neutral?
I'm not against celebrating our talents as actors and being on prime time Hollywood and breaking box office records. I'm not against that in a way, but the expectations I got from the movie was quite different to what I've been hearing.
Interesting.
Like firstly, like the girls were saying, don't take your man with you.
The girls were saying, don't take your man.
Yeah, not that I've got a man to take with me.
Oh, don't worry if you had. You're not breaking the law.
So the girls were saying not
what do you
to
mean,
take your man.
Don't take your man? Sorry.
Because of like the men in the movie.
Oh, interesting. They're saying don't take your man.
That's what I was getting from the ladies.
Okay.
And
what
I was
the
getting
guys
different from the guys. One of them was saying that it's got a whole lot of consciousness in there, like Malachi, or there's a whole lot of different themes that what the conscious movement are doing here and in America. There's all things in the movie that shows that they've been researching on what we're doing, and then put it in the movie.
Okay.
And the third comment I was getting at, if you watch it for just as a movie, then you'll be entertained. But if you're watching it for something greater, conscious level, then it's not going to give you that.
Okay.
That's the aspects that I got.
That's interesting. So let's just talk a little bit about. We're not going to give too much away because there's still quite a few people that have not seen it. So we don't want to I mean, I know people give snippets, but we don't want to spoil it for anybody. But let's just talk about one or two. We're going to be looking at the figures now in a minute. Buzzing Bee's got them up there, and he's going hoo. So we're talking about the sort of money that this movie's made. But it's quite incredible. But let's talk a little bit about why do we think that the sisters are telling not to go with the brothers, and the brothers are not saying not take the sisters. That's quite interesting. Because
why the sisters
are saying
not to take
your man, but the men are not saying. But the men are not really opposed to taking. No one's not saying don't take your sister, don't take your girlfriend as such. I'm just wondering if that's because the girls are running the army, not giving too much away, but the girls are the protectors of the fantasy country. What do you?
I don't think it was on that conscious level. Like, I think it was more on a sexual level to me.
Oh, I see. Because the brothers are looking okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must say they were looking quite good. I know, but I think that obviously they're tongue in cheek and only joking about that because the brothers, I must say, they were. I just love the fact that they were, not so much the physical side, because obviously that's the first thing you see, but I just liked some of the reasoning, and a way that they was a spiritual side to them, you know what I mean? When they had the ritual where they went and had a chance to speak to their father that passed over, Mm-hmm. For me, I thought that was showing in a different light. There's a more gentle, more intellectual side to it. What did you think?
I wasn't really paying much attention to black men, to tell the truth.
Oh, okay then. All right. So I'm not talking about the black men as in what I'm just talking about their role.
Okay, no, it was, as I said, it had a lot of, us in all different types of roles, playing all different types of characters. So that was the element that was good.
Okay.
But the only thing I was a bit disappointed because it's a movie with all of us in there, which we do all the time. There's always movies with us. It should be a norm. It should be a norm. It should be a norm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a normal thing.
Give me another example then, where there's a movie with all black people in it.
Every movie in Africa, you can look at all the big
Nollywood.
Nollywood, and America. It's loads of movies. Yeah, so I couldn't see what the big celebration is of a movie with us in it. It's a norm.
So is that? Norm. Are we talking about the power of marketing and Marvel behind it?
It seems it's only because it's like because Hollywood's decided to make a movie with all black characters in, for white audiences, and they're making mass money. We're celebrating.
Okay. So I suppose the question is, we've got a few coming up. One of the headlines is, before we go to this headline, so tell me where you mentioned something there, Jammers, that there was a couple of threads through the movie on a conscious level. So what consciousness did you? No,
that's that was suggested to me.
Okay, did they say on what level? Conscious.
Well, they were just saying symbols and philosophies, certain philosophies. The fact of that was being the heart. I don't want to really give too much away.
No.
But the high technology that was in that was developed in there, and the materials.
Yeah. So as we know, as Africa has all the minerals, all the irons, all the ores. So so from that perspective, that's interesting. So Buzzing Bee, we've got a headline there. Jammers, don't go. A headline there that says, "Panther move, Black Panther. Does the Marvel epic solve Hollywood's Africa problem?" And I suppose that's a really good question, because there's a lot of stereotyping about the black man, the black person, because gone are the days where the black man is playing the pimp or the drug dealer and the black woman's usually playing the hooker, or something in a very negative aspect. But here we have characters at all sorts of levels, you know what I mean? At the highest level, with family and things like that. But does the Marvel epic solve Hollywood's Africa problem?
Yes, and I saw that when it came out afterwards. It's an article in the Guardian newspaper, a British newspaper, Guardian, seen as liberal left. That might mean different things to different people. Nevertheless, it's the headline says, "Black Panther, does Marvel epic solve Hollywood Africa problem?" And the question that it's addressing has to do that cinema has always portrayed or reduced Africa to some wild place with animals and war, poverty and AIDS. But they're saying that this new, they call it a new Afrocentric. Now they're using the word Afrocentric. Epic will put an end to cliches, but will it? Obviously, they said that fans were long awaiting this fictitious place called Wakanda. Yes, and they call it Afro-futuristic homeland of the Black Panther. And but it does try to look at this, and it talks about it mentions some of the films that have gone on before, movies like Blood Diamond, The Constant Gardener, Hotel Rwanda, Beasts of No Nation, Tears of the Sun, Out of Africa, Born Free, Gorilla in the Mist, and also the ridiculous Tarzan movies as well. And not to mention the canon of pop songs sentimentally blessed with rain down in Africa, questioning whether that they know that is Christmas coming at all. So I think it's a lot to do with the way that that Europeans have often, or the film or Hollywood have had always portrayed Africa and black people. Now we had Coming to America as well, which was usually stereotypical as well, and that was celebrated, by a lot of people as well, but it was hugely stereotypical as well. So I think that I think the question still remains, as to what this particular movie might do in terms of the way that Africa is portrayed. But should we still be waiting on Hollywood? Like Jamo's mentioned, that why are people so astounded? There are loads of black films with 100% black cast. I watch them all the time. Simply because that it's not Hollywood. Somehow it seems to need Hollywood to get the gravitas to it. But I've been buying all black casts for years, and good ones as well. So I mean, it is still there, and the fact that it is fictitious just makes you wonder, why couldn't it be based on a reality of our political lives? It's fictitious because it might make who feel uncomfortable. Why couldn't it be based on the trajectory of a particular place in Africa where it's developed throughout the years and throughout the centuries, or even through the millenniums, and how but it's entirely fictitious, and that is my problem about it. It really is. And I'm wondering if it wasn't fictitious, because even though that is meant to have the political nuance to it, to me that is lost because it is fictitious. Not quite sure that the political nuance of it gets across in that sense, and carries a real political message, as in Malcolm X. Why couldn't it be something of that genre? Theo?
Right. Where should I start with this? Like Buzzing Bee, I too have not yet seen the movie, but I mean, there's been a lot of you can't escape. You can't really escape all of the post release commentary that's going around at the moment. So the kind of things that have come up in what I've been observing, what I've been reading is that, see, there's one thing that sticks out about it, and I think when it comes to particularly the African Americans and how much of an impact this film is supposed to have. But the first thing I want to say is that, you see, one movie is not necessarily going to, as Buzzin was alluding to earlier just now, it's not necessarily going to cover, that headline that was just read off there about how whether it can solve the problems is a kind of, it's a facile question to ask, because this one movie can't possibly address all of the political, cultural, social ramifications that are currently that globally. not just Africans on the continent, in the diaspora, have to grapple with on a day-to-day basis. It can't really shine a spotlight on any of those things and address them to any kind of appreciable degree of exposure to really be effective, you see. That's the first thing I'd say about that. When it comes down to what they call the cinematic production values of the movie, now everyone pretty much is unanimous in that is impressive, and I've not heard anything different to that to anyone, even if they've had discrepancies in terms of the symbology, in terms of the storyline, in terms of the characterizations. The one thing that always is consistent is that it's a pretty mind-blowing visual experience, you see. And I think I'm just gonna introduce a little kind of scientific element to it, in that, you see, we have to consider that when anybody steps into a movie theater, the whole architecture and design of these venues is kind of like designed to kind of like mimic your own sensory experience as though you were not in there. So you kind of have to relax and let this stuff wash over you, and it kind of, in a sense, takes over your thinking for you. And if you're not really kind of careful about that, then you start to induce, kind of thoughts about really fantastic things being possible just as a result of watching this one movie, you see. Another issue that's come up with it is there was calls apparently amongst the African American community that proceeds from these huge revenues that this film is generating be directed to the, air quotes, black community. And I'm going to wait until all of the figures come out before I express my view on that. I think it's a kind of I can't necessarily go along with that, to be honest. Besides all of that, also what I've picked up is there's a lot of homage in the movie to things like eldership, succession rights, motherhood, female inclusiveness. But one negative aspect is there's a kind of wink, nod kind of allusion to the Black Panther Party, which isn't kind of fully given any kind of, substantial credence. I can't say that for sure. I'd have to go and see the film myself. I keep seeing stills of what's his name? T'Challa in his throne, and then there's a juxtaposed next to it. There's a picture of Huey Newton in a chair, and it seems like they've gone to some lengths to kind of borrow from that real life iconic photograph and place that center stage in the Black Panther movie. So there's a lot of things that are being thrust, into the forefront of your consciousness there in this movie, which doesn't seem to get full explanation or expansion for why. But that's it. There's also questions of binary ethics amongst the characters in this movie, because there's an ideological stance which separates T'Challa and King Killmonger, and also that there's one of the white characters is said to be there's two, isn't there? There's Andy Serkis and there's the guy from Sherlock. What's his? Yeah, that guy. And he's some kind of Secret Service agent or something like that. But one of them kind of occupies one of these kind of mentor, donor character type roles, which is usually typically associated to black people when they're helping the white protagonist to fulfill their destiny. So I'm just picking up on some of the lots of the things that I've seen, and there seems to be positive reactions and negative reactions, and I guess the best thing for me to do would be actually see this thing, and then I can go in there with my my little light pen and a clipboard and just just make some notes rather than sit down and just prepare to be entertained. So there's other things to bring up, but as this discourse advances, I'll add some more.
Yeah, you're listening to the 100% Spa Show on slrradio.co.uk, and we have quite an illustrious, panel makeup today. Studio guest. We have Jammers, the only inevitable Jammers, and we also have Theo as well, and we have Star and myself, and we're talking today the Black Panther. We just want the movie. We want to find out we want to find out your take on it. And have you seen it? What do you think of it? Just hit the hotline. It's 07984 931 588. And Jammers, let's got something to say about that.
Yeah, I think it's a new religion. It's a new form of a religion that they've created, another belief system. They've seen now independent producers being successful, and just like they've hijacked the hair products and making money off the hair products, they've analysed what we're into. It's funny how they brought it out in their History Month. Yeah, what's the best way to make this? Is the new form of income. They've sold us down the line on every other thing. So now let's make some money out of their consciousness. So they made out a belief system out of this movies. We're believing it to do what? Because they're in control of it. They run Hollywood. Stan Lee is the creator of Marvel, Disney, Hollywood. So they've taken our cream talents, put on a spectacular show in competition with what we're doing independently, so that they've seen what we're doing at people like 50 Cent and our independent shows. So they see now there's money to be made, but we're trying to attach a level of consciousness, just like what we've done with the religious system. We're trying to put a spirituality in there, but to do what though? To do exactly what? Once the movie's done and everybody's taken off their African clothes, what's going to happen next?
I think you made a very interesting point, and that's what people were alluding to. I think Mohammed last week, he alluded to that. He mentioned that as well. He couldn't see what all the excitement was about, in terms of us. Well, we're going to look at the figures and what this is making, and it says, it's got who is the richest superhero, and let's start. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to start from the bottom to the highest grossing one. Right. So, but this is based on the on some of the the ninth richest net worth and what they expected and what they expected to earn. We have. Let's go through I'm going to go through the first sixes here. Right, and it's right. Here we go. This one. Right, there we go. Right, let's go. It's an Emma Frost net worth $900 billion US. Batman net worth $999.99 million. Green Arrow net worth $3 billion. Iron Man net worth $30 billion. Black Panther net worth 90 trillion. That's what is expected to earn in its lifetime. Trillion. It is projected to worth that, and this is with probably 90% black audiences. So, Jammers, I think you're onto something there. That they've they notice where else can we go to make money from them. We've captured the music. We've got the music industry on lock. The
hair products on lock.
On locks. We've got them rapping. Anybody can rap now, so they've gone clear with that. Everyone sings like us in terms of syncopation and everything now. They stole the whole art form and gone with it clear. So everybody's all one now. And now, so where it's going to go? That they've got, and now it's the conscious movement, like you said. They've hijacked it, and all the people that have been making movies for years and years have been struggling. All the there've been loads of black producers that they're making independent black movies all the time, making a movie. We had Spike Lee who tried and tried to put it out there in a very big way, and he had a very big challenge even in doing that. Marvel comes, and now we're marveling. We're marveling, and the tactic was very good. They launched it in Black History Month.
That's right.
So this in the US, of course, Black History Month, as you called it. And they launched it on that thing. What a master stroke and genius stroke.
And they're making it seem like this is the first ever black movie.
You would have thought that's the
characters.
first black movie ever made.
Yeah, with black characters in it. The first ever one ever done.
It's not with 100% black cast. Yeah. Matter of fact, it's got 2 white casts in it. I've watched black movies and there's not a white in sight. So I can't see what the fuss is. Apart from the 90 trillion is expected to make, and where's most of that money? Couldn't we make that? Couldn't a black company make that? And then because if 90% of black people are seeing this thing, why can't a black movie company get that? You know what $90 trillion could do in our community globally?
Africa, yeah.
globally, that's a lot. That's a country economy there that you're talking
and
about.
You think a key element, because who's going to be managing that amount of money?
90 trillion.
Whose hands is that
where's
going
that
to? Yeah.
To Marvel, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. This is the thing.
It's saying that the box office is set to. They're making about 112 million every weekend. 112 million. So let's just think about this. Right. So let's just think about this. That's a lot of money.
It's the new Bible. It's the new Bible.
If we think about some of the basic poverty, homelessness, hunger, education. I mean, there's a whole lot of social issues that are well documented, all right, globally, in Africa and in the USA. I mean, all over where you've got people of African heritage, and can you imagine that? Let's just say the capitalist society obviously is alive and kicking, where they've invested their money so they can have a return of $90 trillion. I mean, it just shows you the mentality, if I have to be honest, of where we are as a people, doesn't it? Where we're far happy to go out and spend 112 million over the weekend watching a movie where a lot of the returns. I mean, we know actors. I agree with what you said. We're not decrying or trying to put down the work of the actors and things like that, or the cinematography, as Theo just said. But if we just really think about this, I mean, Hollywood is big business. That's what it is, and that is a lot of money. Okay, to invest in, So you're right. I think you'll find that we're going to see more of this, where they've hijacked the black, I say, cause in a way. And just literally capitalising on it. But on another note, you have to remember, art really does mirror life in a way. So how many people of colour are being doctorate? How many minds are being swayed now to think that this is all we have to do? Cross hands, the old Black Panther cross, and everything's going to be okay. And really not look at the real social issues that are impacting on our young people. We've got the knife and gun crime. We've got our elderly people, a lot of them not being looked after and cared properly. A lot of our young people not in the education system. We've got a lot of people who are long-term unemployed. I mean, the list goes on. And how much of that money is going into community? I mean, I don't think they have an obligation, because we're talking business, aren't we?
Definitely. And if you look at the plan as well, because the next basically is to Black History Month. Let's get all of that wealth, and then the part 2 now they're linking it with the Avengers. So now let's take all the money that from the Black Panther and get all that marketing to bring them to our arena, where now the Black Panther becomes part of the Avengers War, Infinity War. That's the next film which incorporates the Black Panther. So they're taking all the African wealth from the Black Panther, all the hype from the Black Panther, and bringing it to their arena with the Avengers. So the next one's going to be a combination of the Black Panther audience with the Avengers audience, so they're clean up, and our consciousness now is going to be mingled in what they're going to be transpiring to do.
So what's really interesting, what you've just said there, because we have to remember, we have got an A-list. When you've got people like Chadwick Boseman, Michael Jordan, even people like Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker, these are upstanding black actors of age and, really talented, and they've participated in they are in this movie, Laputa, how do you say Lupita, the 12 years a slave young lady, debuted there, so, and Daniel as well. So, you've got talented actors really selling this thing as well. And I'm really quite fascinated now why they decided to invest in this in the first place.
Well, I think, like Jamus said, I'll go back to the point that Jamus raised. I think in terms of capitalising on we live in a capitalist world, and wherever there's opportunity. And opportunities everywhere, and money can be made from anything, if you've got the desire. Well, because there's never a particular given special time as when to do something. You know, you look around the market and the opportunity is there, and you say, "Boys, let's go, let's do it." You know, I'm sure they might have surveyed, you know, the film market to see what's, Jamo said, to see what's going on. Where else can we go? Oh, you know what? Let's do something, you know, a science fiction thing. You know, we haven't had this yet, obviously, and probably looking at what had gone on before as well. I mean, the Rolling Stone, the Rolling Stone online magazine, they did a article that talks about black heroes, superheroes matter. Why Black Panther is revolutionary, and this article is in the Rolling Stones, and it's written by Trey Johnson, and it talks about there's a bit that caught me. Part of it says the black men in the movie or women didn't cower in the face of danger, white power, or guns. Their combination of sex appeal and swagger made many audiences fell in love with them. Now, and that's one of the reviews coming. But then again, it is also mindful as well that the article is mindful about how Africa is often portrayed, and it talks about the author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She talks about today. She's an author. She's a novelist. Yes, and she said is saying that there's a danger, and I quote, the danger of a single story, unquote, about Africa, because they just put this particular idea and right away, like the negative stereotype, this become the one story about Africa, and everybody buys on, Latin Europeans buy into that. But there's a multiplicity of stories in Africa. There's no one story, no one way in which Africa should be. So I think it's also mindful about that, about, you know, the danger of having a single story about Africa, about black brilliance, our humanity, and the black experience as well. So there would never be a time when this movie's creation wouldn't mean something to black people, the article is saying. So I think we also have to be, also the fact that it's being presented as positive, what are the other nuances there of what it's doing in terms of just, you know, presenting one stereotype, or one, as Ngozi is saying, the danger of a single story about Africa.
Another thing, you have to be careful, positive to who, because
absolutely. Well, that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, an underlying message is that there's materials in Africa that will benefit the whole world.
And it's worth $10,000 a gram.
Yeah, and so it's to all the Western European Chinese to go in there and take it over. So this is another signal saying it out.
It's right for colonization again. Just go and grab it, you know.
Because I don't want to give too much away, because it was called Vibratron.
Right.
And vibe means energy, feeling.
Yeah.
We have feeling, we have energy, we have the vibes.
Yes.
You know, this is an unseen power that we have. You know, and so they're sending out a signal. This is the place to go.
Yes.
To all the corporate companies.
Yeah. If you want to join the conversation, or you have a text or anything to say, Black Panther 07984 931 588. I think we're going to grab a track, as Star says, and then we'll be right back to continue this discussion. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the 100% Spa Show.
This is your #1 radio station.
SLR is here just for you, your community radio station.
Tune in and rip the knob off.
Yes, hello and welcome back to the 100% Spa Show on slrradio.co.uk. And today we have in the studio Jamis, and we have Theo contributing to the discussion today. And we were talking Black Panthers, Star, myself, Pleasant Bay, and during we had an off-air discussion, and surrounding the whole movie and all the, you know, the politics and the economic around it, and how we would benefit from this 90 trillion pounds, and then we were talking about what does it say about us in 2018? So we begin to look at different movements that we've been through as black people, and the movements that were forging to try to change a new reality and to get us to see ourselves in a different perspective. And there's a new one, a new movement. I'm not sure whether you heard about it. Was started about 2005, and it's about an Afropolitan. I'm not sure if you've heard the term Afropolitan. But it means it's a term that's been constructed from the name Africa and the ancient Greek word of politis, meaning citizens. But this new idea, concept, is about redefining the African phenomenon by placing emphasis on ordinary citizens' experiences in Africa. So Africopolanism is similar to the old Pan-Africanism ideology. However, it defines itself as an African in explicit continent-wide and multiracial terms, and rejects all ideas, all pretensions to victimhood. Achille Mbami and Sarah Nuttall writes, and I quote, "In an attempt to overturn the predominant readings of Africa, we need to identify sites within the continent, not usually dwelt upon in research and public discourse, that defamiliarize commonplace readings of Africa. These sites include fields like fashion, visual art, and spiritual concern." Now, this research is on Wikipedia. It talks about the term being popularized in 2005 and widely disseminated in an essay called Bye Bye Baba, or What is an Afropolitan, by author Tani Selassie, and that was written in 2005. Now, the essay is important in discussing where immigrants of Africa fit in the spectrum of Africa. Now, you know, and it has grown since. Lots of different magazines begin to publish this essay. In 2006, the essay was republished by Michael Stevens in the gallery in Cape Town, South Africa. In 2007, by The Nation newspaper in Nairobi, whereupon it went viral. Several communities, artists, and publications now use the label, more notably the Afropolitan Network, the Afropolitan Experience, the Afropolitan Legacy, the Afropolitan Legacy Theatre, the Afropolitan Collection, South Africa's The Afropolitan Magazine. In June 2011, the Victoria here in London, the Victoria and Albert Museum Symposium hosted Late Friday Afropolitan in London. In September 2011, the Houston Museum of African American Culture convened the symposium Africans in America, the New Beat of Afropolitans, featuring authors Teju Cole, musician Derek Ashong, and Wichinji Mutu alongside Selassie. Ashong released an online album with the group Solfege in 2011 titled Afropolitan. Blizz the Ambassador proposed in 2013 to release a CD called Afropolitan Dreams. Adebantu is the creator of the monthly concert series Afropolitan Vibes, which is held at Freedom Park, Lagos, Nigeria. And there's similar terms associated with it. You have Afrophile, Afrophilia, doesn't sound too right to me, and Afrophilia, spelled in with a Y-A. So this is the newish kind of idea, concept, or movement which seeks to challenge what some people see as the victimhood context of Pan-Africanism to a more wider view in the way that Africans should perceive themselves, not as victims, but perceive themselves as they are seeing it in a more positive light, through arts, through music, fashion, spiritual, and more importantly, they're now encompassing by being multiracial. So now everyone can be an African, whether you're white, whether it doesn't really matter. And to some extent, some people might argue that, not in the modern context as we know it, but I suppose some people might argue, well, if life starts there, then that means that everybody is. But that's not the way it generally works, because that is not the social reality of everyday life. We could make that argument until the cows come home. The reality is, it is not the everyday reality when you go out there in the world, because if everybody was, then then the world would not be the way it is. So you could make an argument like that, but like I said, it is not the daily reality in the way the world is at the moment. It's not the social reality either. So we're looking at it from the context of where we are now and the way that we perceive ourselves. So here we have this new term, Afropolitan. What do you think of it, the Afropolitan? Listeners, if you've got any comment, what do you think about it? Do you think it's we should move away from the older Pan-Africanism as they see it, projecting ourselves only in the context of victimhood, and move to a brighter, wider, more positive idea, all encompassing, using the arts and fashion and music and our spiritual concerns, rather than wrapping ourselves with the cloth of victimhood. Theo, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. That was that was one hell of a lead up. So I'm gonna go. so let's let me just dissect some of this in my understanding of, because I've had some exposure to this whole Afropolitan idea, and as you was reading off there, I was kind of like just exploring my own contemplations on the whole thing, and it's been going, the movement, for some time now. So, but then it does kind of take on the form of, like, in business you have something known as an IPO, which is an initial public offering. Now, in that kind of, the analogy there is that, see, Afropolitanism, despite all the flowery rhetoric and high-minded talk that's going on there, is akin to this whole idea where this is like the initial public offering of African culture to all comers. See, and it's going to be a transnational thing. And despite the suggestion that this is something which all those who have an interest in this have access to, we're still going to be talking about, and even my initial kind of forays into this whole idea reveals that you're talking about, once again, select groupings, because this Afropolitan philosophy, you see, is kind of fashioned after the whole kind of international, globalized European ethos in terms of trading and doing what they would call business and commerce, you see. So that's where I see all of this kind of like going, and it links to what Jama said earlier on about what Black Panther, the movie, the kind of mindset that's going to induce in terms of being very kind of free and easy with your own, what should be really more valuable to you, not something to just be kind of like hawked off to the highest bidder in order for you to gain some kind of return or whatever you regard to be your idea of wealth. Because if we look at it like at the African continent right now, you see, the control of the resources is either being battled over by indisciplined factions, or it's controlled by those outside of Africa. See, so what have you got left to trade with that you actually have some kind of control over the maneuvering of those deals? You have your culture, you see. One of the things I read in when I looked into this earlier on, before we've even spoke about this today, was that one of the proponents for this Afropolitan idea speaks about, making some kind of gain from commodifying aspects and artifacts of the culture itself. So you're kind of like putting it out there. You see, these Afropolitans kind of like they travel under this guise of almost like I said, fashioning themselves after the European ethos in terms of capitalism, in terms of commodification, but they present themselves with an external African aesthetic. So they'll be wearing their dashikis and their traditional costumes, but they're about the business.
Yeah, and
they're about the business.
And what do you think about it in the context of? I can hear the economic argument for it, and I can see where that is the case. Just modelling, kind of a repackaging Africa in a way, but in a way that is more accessible to European markets, and getting them to even have their fashions quite similar. Tailored to European taste, because I've seen it on CNN, because the CNN gives them a big platform. They're on CNN. CNN have done a review there. But what do you think about it in terms of moving away from the Pan-Africans' position about, as they see it, this case about victimhood, because Pan-Africanism is obviously about, looking at how we were treated in the past and not making the same mistake again politically or socially. But the Afropolitan movement seems to think that is victimhood if you have to look at your history and what you've gone through. They seem to find it too much to bear. What do you think about the new position they're taking in that?
This position, I'd have to say, is a kind of very one-dimensional representation of what Pan-Africanism is actually supposed to be. Now, if we're going to look at Pan-Africanism, the last thing that I'm going to be looking at is an idea of victimhood or victimology. If you look at Pan-Africanism in its essence, right, it's talking about, right, collective economic empowerment. It talks about self-determination. It talks about nationhood. Nowhere do I see these Afropolitans mentioning any of these principles. You see, it's also about recognizing the genuine value of your culture and then directing the terms under which you interact with other people with those ideas at the very center of it. That is what Pan-Africanism is actually about. Nowhere does it talk about victimhood. What it does do is it presents cultural, political, and social realities in context, and then brings the experience over the time that we all know that the Europeans and Arabs have encroached onto the continent and the impact that has had, and puts those into context and how it plays into and how it contributes to the situation that pretty much affects Africa today, that leads to things like the brain drains. You have fully qualified doctors going to Czechoslovakia and Poland and Italy to be doctors, and yet those very same skills should be devoted to your own people on the continent, rather than having those governments shell out exorbitant amounts of fees to bring in European Western experts to do the very same jobs that they already have the personnel to do. But because they're chasing an idea of wealth elsewhere, they don't direct that resource that they possess within themselves, their knowledge, their connection to the culture. They should know the people, and they should also have that expansive idea of, if we're talking about health, to treat diseases from a perspective that kind of repudiates these outside interests trying to flood the markets with their pharmaceuticals. That's just one example of it. Nowhere do I hear this Afropolitan idea addressing these things, really being kind of disingenuous about what Pan-Africanism stands for. So let's be totally transparent about what we're dealing with here, rather than just mudslinging.
Jamus eagerly there, waiting to come. I can see the ideas bursting through his forehead. Jamus, come in there.
What was the term? Afro? Was it Afro what?
Afropolitan.
Right. Let me.
Afropolitan. It says it's a term.
Afropolitan.
As a metropolitan. Afro and politan meaning citizens, come from the Greek word meaning citizen, politists. So it's Afropolitan.
Right. Firstly, I want to say this is it's attack on the original self-reliant movement for empowerment, the Black Panther movement. What a better way of attacking it? By giving a watered-down house Negro movement called the Black Panther, which is constructed by Parliament, which is constructed by Marvel or by them. Basically, there's 4 types of Africans: the self-reliant Africans who love themselves and will collaborate with other Africans, represented by the Black Panther movement, the original Black Panther movement, not the cross your harm like Jesus Black Panther. I'm talking about the hand in the air Black Panther movement. The second type of Africans are Africans that don't like other Africans. Yeah. The third type of Africans are Africans who don't see themselves as Africans. And the fourth type of Africans are the Afropolitans.
Wow. Aren't we mixed up?
Who are wannabe Anglo-Saxons. They don't see themselves as black. They see themselves as dark white.
Right.
And they love other races more than themselves.
Well, this is the whole idea. Because I had a discussion with someone who seems quite enthusiastic about the idea of Afropolitanism, and they were thought it was, they were quite excited by it, and thank heavens we're moving away from the depressing idea, the victimhood of Pan-Africanism, and they were but it's largely driven by a lot of people who perhaps see themselves, in this class thing in terms of where they define themselves through their professions. A lot of people are driving it, or from that clique of people. If you only follow that select, it's a very tiny minority who's driven it. There's a magazine now called Afropolitan. It's based in South Africa. It's an online magazine, and a lot of the people that CNN gives it a platform every single day. There's several programs there that are giving them this platform to express themselves, and CNN is everywhere, from Tanzania down to they go everywhere, and they're seeking out these young, the fashion people. No politics whatsoever, none to do with politics. There's no politics talk about it. It's all about fashion and music and whatever, and how they can make the next Versace and things like that. I saw a program, one was on Ghana the other day, and this guy talking about, he was influenced by Versace and he's trying to be the next Versace, but they're not making African clothes per se. They're using African prints, but it's more in the European, in the Western European model, trying to break it in like that. And he's using white models, any models he's using, everybody and sundry can come in. So this is what the Afropolitics is about, encompassing, all-inclusive.
I like what you say, because basically when you take away a man or woman's culture and you get them interested in clothes, then all they're going to have is a closed mind.
Closed mind, I like that, Jamie. He's trying to steal my job.
That's not necessary. He's got the same job. Yeah. Jammers, yes, your definition of the 4 types of African, I think that's really, really interesting. But I want to look at the first one, where we do talk about the African who sees himself as an African and wants to work with Africans. My personal take on that, even the description of that group of people are not really true to wanting to really work with other Africans, if you understand what I mean. There is still I'm not saying they're the number 2, where they're not having no association and don't see themselves as that. Sometimes you can have someone who supposedly is meant to be there for the cause, as a Pan-African is, as a who would class themselves for that, but their actions don't depict that. The way they treat their own people, the way that they are not. And I'm not trying to use heads of African countries who have been. I'm not trying to use the Mugabes or these other people who they would put in the Zuma now. All these people who are heads of these African countries that have everything going, all the resource, all the everything, but they're not treating their people very well. but they would class themselves as the very same Africans who are Pan-Africanists, who are trying to get along with their neighbours, but they're not demonstrating that. And I think that sometimes, as people, we're not honest with ourselves. You know, we don't have an honest conversation with ourselves because of maybe the number 2 African you just mentioned there, whereas deep down they don't see themselves as Africans. No, I'm being serious. You know, we've got a lot of I don't want to say wolves in sheep clothing.
Well, shall I just what it is that basically people can switch between one and the other. So some parts they can be want to be Africa, yeah, they oscillate, and then when they go in another area, you know, when they go, like when it comes to clothes now, they want to be Anglo-Saxons. You see what I'm saying?
That's
so they
what
can.
I'm trying to say to you, right? And what I'm trying to say to you is, it's not necessarily a criticism. I'm just trying to talk about the human condition and where we find ourselves as people. And I think half the problem why we have not seen, I personally think as an African person, I personally think there has been progress. I hear people all the time saying, "Oh, I haven't done this," but me myself personally, I think there is progress. I have never felt. I've always been proud of who I am. You know, I've never had this complex. I could never understand why people of African heritage don't want to be African. That's the honest truth. That's a personal thing. It's like, well, what else are you? Why are you denying what you are? It doesn't even make any sense. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, that's got to be more than a boulder on your, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, it's like a chicken saying it's a duck.
That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. You're of African heritage. That is what you are. I mean, what are you calling yourself? Why do you want to represent? That's right. We know that it's very deep, and we understand all that. So we now find ourselves with an Afropolitan movement. I have to
one step away from metropolitan.
That's right. Well, it is. Well, that's what it's about, you see. But what I find interesting, do you remember the 80s where we had the buppies? Remember that? Where they had the yuppies, then you had the buppies. That's right, that's what it was. And they were all the bourgeois, they were all the ones, bourgeois, I can never say the word right. They were all the ones who had the good jobs and the this and the that. And I knew a load of them, I'm sorry. Just all pretentious load of crap, let's be honest, right? They were giving it the I am this, I am that, we don't want to be mixing, I'm sending my child to this school. I heard it all. And now I see half of these people 15 years later, and I'm telling you, it's pitiful. It's pitiful, isn't it? Mash up, lick up through the Edos. I'm serious. They're not, you know, I remember once this guy worked in the bank, he was black, and I always remember him. And there was this organisation called the African Caribbean Finance Forum. I don't know if, do you remember that one?
Yes.
Run by bankers. Also, all the people part of this group are all so cool. I'm sorry if you're listening, you're part of the group. You know what I'm saying, right? You can slag me off, please. I have no issue with it. They were all black bankers and this and that. But the behaviour towards other black people in that group, it was terrible. It was wicked. It was this counter. It was awful. It was so vile, unnecessary, where you had other people of colour destroying other people, all in the name of what? Yes, striving towards this European recognition, idealism of I have to be somebody. Everybody is somebody, and this is what we all need to realise. Don't care who you are, standing where you are with what you got, you are somebody. You know, and I think it's about time we moved away from these labels that somebody gives the race, and people just go along with it. Do you understand? So now you've got black people actually pushing that I'm a Afro, and probably being quite proud about it. What is that to be proud of?
Well,
that you want to dissolve your culture. You want to what? Let anybody. It's not about anybody. If we put the word Indian in front of that. Indian politician, is that we're going to ever see that? Are we going to see Jewish are we ever going to see that?
But the thing about I know Theo wants to come in here, but and James as well. But I think the whole thing about, you know, it's almost like you said that you're literally asked to forget the very tenets that would make you African, because it's more about what Europeans or the white world is uncomfortable with, because they are not uncomfortable with anything that is remotely African. They really not want to engage it. If you can repackage it that we find it acceptable or to our sensibilities, then you can come in the fold, and that's exactly what's happening. This is what this Afropolitan nonsense is about, and unfortunately, it's taken swathe across the continent and the global African diaspora. And they're trying to push it. It's got it's got platform. All the big media houses, in European countries or European dominated countries are giving them the platform. All of them. Before they couldn't even come in. They didn't want them in there. Now CNN, Fox News, they're everywhere. Australia, they're everywhere. So the whole concept is really spreading fast, and they're selling it around all the, particularly, Africa is a very young continent. There's a lot of majority of the people who are there. It's a young continent in terms of age and the amount of young people there, and the whole idea is being sold to them. I see a lot of the programs on across the media networks, and it's really taking shape. It really is. You want to come in?
There was a story, a children's story about a crow that had a big hunk of cheese and was sat up in a tree, and loads of other creatures came along and made various requests to get hold of this cheese, and this crow wouldn't actually part with it. And then there's a reason why I'm telling all this. I'm going to go through it quickly. And eventually a fox came along, and what the fox did was sweet talk very nicely to this crow and tell them all sorts of wonderful things and say how beautiful they were and that loved the plumage and all this, until the crow eventually got really excited and went rah! And then exactly the cheese fell out and off went the fox. Now, there was a Rolling Stone article that you briefly scrolled through, and there was this talk about the appreciation of the black form and how much they come to love it and be it and kind of like accept this uncompromising stance in the face of danger and guns, and I thought there's a lot of loaded dog whistle language going on in here, right? And I just picked up from that point because you see, in a sense, and I may have to go back and do further investigation into this, but you see what's going on here is there's a response to shallow flattery going on, both in response to the Black Panther movie and with this phenomenon known as Afropolitan. Now we've got to be careful about these Afro this and that labels, because it's not black people who come up with these terms. There was an earlier allusion to when I'm talking about this Afrofuturistic idea in Wakanda. Now, Mark Derry is a white journalist who is credited with coining the term Afrofuturism. So you can bet your bottom dollar that Afropolitan is coined by somebody who isn't even African. And before you start bracing those things, before you start responding prematurely to the flattery going on, because the whole idea is that internationally or globally, all these accoutrements of being African are being embraced by non-Africans, and it really comes down to what is you see, there's a difference between genuine appreciation and insincere flattery. And one of the definitions for flattery is more or less telling people how they already feel about themselves. And yeah, but the other thing I was going to say is that, you see, when it comes down to this whole thing, you just interrupted. Sorry. I was going somewhere, and I'm going to try and get it. I'm not. Well, yeah. So the flattery aspect of it is right there in the core of this whole. Yeah, this is on back now, because there's these very incorrect references to Pan-Africanism as being like almost knee-jerk and being very steeped in victimology, but then you could look at the Afropolitan movement and you can see and identify aspects that reveal that there's a lot of inferiority lying at the base of that very idea. Jamas?
It's interesting what you're saying about the Afropolitan idea that's been pushed out, because if you look at the Panther movie, and you say it's the messages towards the young people, the Panther movie is exactly putting that that message across, because you've got the revolutionary who represents the Black Panther, the light-skinned, westernized African, fighting against the Afro-politician, is it? Afropolitan character. So you've got the light-skinned westernized Africa fighting against the dark-skinned African, and the revolutionary African, westernized African fighting against the pacifist African. So basically, the pacifist African wins over the revolutionary African, and the message is to go and help everybody else, not even help the surrounding areas of Africa, but go and use your resources. This is the underlying message of the film, to go and help everybody else. And at the end of it, they've been labelled as farmers. You know, they managed to slip in a racist statement at the end of the movie. I mean, that would never happen in a Jewish movie.
No.
Would never happen in a Chinese movie.
It would happen in Bollywood,
No, you
Hollywood.
would never get. They're not allowed
No.
to slip in a racist statement at the end of the movie. And two white people.
What have you?
One.
In the UN. That's in the UN
Yeah.
setting, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
That's
in
what
the
I'm
UN
saying. A
setting.
very formal.
And against, in front of everybody.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
this country that's offered its resources to save everybody.
Yes.
In front of everybody, they've allowed this a statement to say they're a bunch of farmers. What can a bunch of farmers do?
No.
And that's allowed in one of the biggest supposed to be Hollywood movie. They've
Well,
allowed
that's
this.
why. Well, that's what I'm saying, and that just shows why they've actually captured the minds of people at the level that they want to. Because even if we run through the thread of it, you have at the end of the movie, you have black on black murder, don't you? You know what I mean? Because brothers killing each other. It is quite a deep movie.
Playing in it, yeah.
But well, you're in tune to 100% Spa Show. I know Buzzing Bee has got a text he's going to read, but before we go on to the text, I just want to remind everybody on the show today that we are talking about the Black Panther, but I think at this point we have to remember that you still have individuals who are incarcerated who are Black Panthers from the original Black Panthers. And actually in The Guardian a few days ago, the movie where it's got Black Panther film fuels calls for release of the jailed political activists, because you still have people in prison after over 30 years. And actually the call is after Siko Adingo was released. He's saying that after 33 years behind bars, the former Black Panther leader was released into the United States he didn't recognise, with strange technology and grandchildren he never hugged. Though he celebrated with family and supporters, Adiga 73 also remained mindful of the many other civil rights activists who weren't so lucky. You'll always feel like you don't want to leave nobody behind. And what they're saying for the light of this movie, which I think is quite interesting, that now is the time that they need to look at the movie and the real life Black Panthers who fought for black liberation in the 1960s and 70s. And it says some of whom have also been fighting for their own freedom, because they are still incarcerated to this day. And the Marvel superhero film, which is already breaking records at the box office that we've just been talking about, it calls that that people actually use it as a platform for individuals to get some recognition and possibly even release from prison, as they were fighting originally to liberate the black movement, part of the black liberation movement. So I think, we have to remind people that, maybe Marvel have taken the title, they've run off with it, they've made 90, they're looking at grossing over 90 billion for it, fair enough. But guess what? You still have individuals incarcerated to this day fighting for liberating the black people.
Yeah, that's right, and I think that we should be very mindful of that and not get lost in that. But Theo, you mentioned that earlier on in your comments that in terms of who coined the phrase, I think Tayi Selassie is credited with doing so. She was born in London, England, and raised in Brookline, Massachusetts. She's the elder of of twin daughters. She comes from a family of academics. She graduated summa cum laude, which means with the highest distinction, with a BA in American Studies at Yale University, and holds a Master of Philosophy in International Relations from Oxford University. So in 2005, LIP published Bye Bye Bar, or What is an Afropolitan. In 2012, Selassie launched a multimedia project, 2154, set out to photograph and film 20-somethings in all 54 African countries. Now, she touted ahead of her book, remember Ghana Must Go, 2013. She's the writer of that book.
Right.
As a spokesperson for a new generation of Afropolitan writers, Taya begins a career with a heavyweight mentors and daunting expectation. A transitional cosmopolite of Nigerian and Ghanaian descent, educated in Britain and the United States, Selassie herself sees herself as a new generation that possesses a willingness to complicate Africa, namely to engage with critique and celebrate the parts of Africa most means to them. Selassie fiction is expansive in scope and spanning continents and generations, and has been praised by the Wall Street Journal for invigorating and mixture of darkness and tragedy with which it chronicles the family dynamics of a complicated African identity. So she's the one responsible, is credited with coining the phrase Afropolitan. So there you are. It was done by a black person and not perhaps the word Afro could have been,
we'll have to accept that for now. But I'll just remind us all here and those listening that there was a book that came out in the 70s which caused quite great kind of reverberations throughout the African American community, called the Black Machismo and the Myth of the Superwoman, written by a young black lady by the name of Michelle Wallace. And then it turned out that the actual author behind it was the CIA sponsored feminist Gloria Steinem.
Yeah.
So you don't credit Ty and Selassie.
We don't know.
We can always look further to verify
You can't say that.
The true provenance of these ideas.
Well, sometimes we have to give her. I think we're intelligent people. So do we put it beyond ourselves that we couldn't come up with something like this?
No, I mean,
I don't think we should push it beyond ourselves. Don't you think? Credit for something, even if it's a bad or whatever idea.
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter what we think of it, but
maybe
you might agree with it. But
her background is
her background. She's a philosopher.
I mean, it's possible.
It's possible.
Really, it's possible. It's possible.
It's possible.
I mean,
it's possible.
Feel skeptical, but
it's possible.
I'm not skeptical.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, time is running against us. Sadly, time has really run away when it's going. We've got a text that came in the studio commenting on the Black Panther and the discussion we're having about that, and it says, "Greetings, Buzz and B and Sister Star and the guests. The Black Panther movement was set up to fight racial oppression and discrimination based on the color of your skin. It is not about a fictional village in Africa. Hollywood will never show the positive side of the African people." And that comes from Rash Jr. And I quite agree with every word said by Rash Jr. There's nothing there for me to disagree with.
Okay, you are in tune to the 100% Spa Show on slrradio.co.uk. We've only got a few minutes left, but our community news and views, we've got Unsung Heroes of the Industrial Revolution, a multimedia presentation by Stacey Ann Lee and Paul Nichols, highlighting the many contributions of people of African origin to the Industrial Revolution. So the guest for that is Menelik Shabazz, the film director. He's best known for his acclaimed debut, Burning an Illusion, which won the Grand Prix at the Amin International Film Festival in 1982. And the film also won the lead actress, Cissy MacFarlane, the Evening Standard Award for Promising Actress, showing some of his social documentaries, including Breaking Point, addressing the Sus Law controversy, interviews with the late Stuart Hall and Paul Boateng. Breaking Points is the first documentary directed by a black director for mainstream British television. And then we got Blood Hugger Run, which is made in 1981, documents the response of the black communities at the New Cross, including the Black People's Day of Action. And that's quite interesting because this year I believe that there was I'm not sure it was 30 years, but there was a special anniversary for the New Cross fire. So this should be quite interesting. So this event takes place tomorrow, Tuesday the 27th of February, between 6:30 and 9 p.m, and it's at the London College of Communication. The nearest station is Elephant and Castle. Lecture room, Theatre C. Knowledge is power. Understand the revolution. And this is a free event.
And we should try to get to support this particular event.
Yeah.
But time is against us now. We've definitely gone against us. And we just want to thank everyone who's took the time to listen to us. You could have been doing anything else, and this is where we're going to be saying our goodbyes. So, Theo?
Yes, another great discussion. It's too bad that we can't go on longer, but yes, the clock has caught up with us, and I've had a great time here. We didn't explore everything, but of course, there's always next week we can catch up and bring more news and views to the people. So great to be here again. Thank you. Good night to everyone.
Yeah, Steph?
Thanks very much, listeners, for all of your views, your time. As the team said, we know you could be doing anything, and we appreciate your contribution. Yes. We're looking forward to the pastor and Michael and Corinne in the studio. Mm-hmm. So take care. It is really cold out there, so please wrap up warm and take care of yourselves.
Absolutely.
And we'll be in touch next week.
Yeah, whatever you do, have a great and positive week.
Have fun.
Thank you for listening.